Hola! We are going to whip through a video lesson quick here on multiplying and dividing integers. This is probably way easier than adding and subtracting. So the trick pretty much is make your own little melody here for the song. Same signs positive, different signs negative. I'm not sure how you'd sing that. So this first rule really applies to when there are pairs or two numbers or an even set of numbers. Okay, so we'll talk about odds in a little bit. First of all, multiplying integers with different signs. So if the signs are different, then the product, meaning that's the answer to multiplication, of those two integers is going to be negative. So whether they are positive, a positive and negative, or negative positive, your product will be negative. It's kind of like two people with two different signs or two different viewpoints. They might have a negative time because they're going to be like, oh, this is such a half full situation. This is such a half empty situation. They're just going to feed off each other in a negative way, which is silly. We should all be able to get along. When we are multiplying integers with the same sign, their product is going to be positive. So if you think two positive people, glass half full, they're having a great time thinking about positivity in the world. Two negative people that are like, bah humbug, half empty, they're still having a good time because they like complaining together. So if the signs are the same, your answer is positive. If your signs are different, your answer is negative. Long-winded, but you get it. So you can hear some examples here. Use those to guide you. So see if you are ready. You can try these next three examples. Here I have 6 and a negative 8. So I have positive and a negative, two different signs. Then I multiply as normal. 6 times 8 is 48. Negative 9 times 2. I have two different signs. So that would be a negative. 9 times 2 is 18. And lastly, a negative times a negative, the signs are the same, so it's a positive answer, and 4 times 3 is 12, so just 12. All right, if it's more than two integers, though, this is important. So if you have an odd number, you can do them kind of in any order. So you think associative property can group them differently. So I could do two different ways here. Just go left to right. These are grouped together first. I get a negative 26 times negative 5. Negative times a negative is a positive. 20 times 5 is 100. 6 times 5 is 30. So positive 130. If I do it a different way, say I group instead the 2 there, and then I do 13 times that negative 5 first, group in a different order, well, then I have a negative times a positive. And here I'm going to get we have 13, 5 times 10 is 50, 5 times 3, so 65, but that's a negative. Now I have a negative times a negative, so it's going to be still a positive 130. So you can see that associative property there, applying that. Secondly, though, what I might like to do is my commutative property. I can change the order of the numbers. So I might put my negatives together first, because I know a negative times a negative is a positive, and then multiply. So I just have my positive. 10 times 13 is 130. So you can see I got the same answer, multiple different ways of doing that with different properties. So what you notice is there was more than two integers there. So I don't love the way this is worded, because it seems like it would be an odd number. So I'm kind of just thinking about it as pairs. If you have pairs of evens or pairs of positives and pairs of negatives, anytime there's two of them, that should be positive. So if there's an odd number or another left out, that's a different story. So just pay attention and make your pairs together. So here, just two numbers for A, different signs. So my product is negative. 5 times 3 is 15. This might be a good place for you to just pause and check in, especially on this first row. So do that. For B, two signs are different, so it's negative. 8 times 6 is 48. For C, signs are different. Product's negative. 2 times 4 is 8. D, the signs are the same. So even though it's two negatives, my answer is a positive, and 3 times 7 is 21. Two positives, same sign. 6 times 4 is 24. F here is where we have to be a little bit careful. So you'll notice it's negative 5 to the second power. That means negative 5 times itself, negative 5. So that is equal to a positive 25. Later on, you might find something that looks like this. If that negative's on the outside, that is actually like there's a negative 1 there, and then you're doing 5 times 5. So that's different. That'd be negative 25. So be careful with that on the outside. But we'll talk about that later on. So this next row here, maybe you want to try them, maybe you want to follow along. I have 4 times a negative 2 times a negative 5. So I have two negative numbers and a positive. So I'm going to keep my 4 here, and I'm going to do these two first. So a negative times a negative I know is positive. 2 times 5 is 10. Then I have two positives. 4 times 10 is 40. So again, you can work left to right. You can do your properties. Here I'm just going to work left to right. This negative 1, I know any number times 1 is itself. But here, because it's a negative, even though these two negatives make a positive, we then multiply again by a negative, which transfers that positive back to that negative. Or that odd number of negatives there. We had. Next one says negative 2 to the third power. That means negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times itself 3 times. So then I can go left to right. Negative and negative is positive. But when I multiply a negative again, that negative didn't have a pair. So it made the whole thing negative again. Just take some practice. All right, so the same rules are applying for division. So division is not going to scare us because we're going to follow those same rules. And we know that dividing is the same as multiplying, but in reverse. So dividing, the words are that when the quotient of two integers with different signs is going to be negative. So the answer, if they have different signs, is negative. The answer to a division question, quotient, when two integers have the same sign, is positive. So again, this is applying to when we have pairs, two numbers. So what I don't want you to do is be like, oh, division, I can't do it. I want you to think about what you do know. So when you read this, instead of negative 24 divided by 3, you could say, okay, this is the same as saying 3 times what number gives me negative 24. And you know the rules. A positive times a negative would give me a negative, and 3 times 8 is 24. So same thing here. Think about it as a multiplication question if that helps you. This is really negative 30 divided by negative 15. So negative 15 times what would give me a negative 30. So again, I have a negative times something different would give me a negative answer. So this should be a positive. 15 times 2 is 30. So try that if it helps you. If not, do it your own way. So I have a negative and negative. The signs are the same. So I know my answer should be positive. I also know that if I would have negative 7 times what would give me a negative 28. So that would be a positive 4. 36 divided by 2, negative 2. Negative 2 times what gives me 36. A negative times a negative would give me a positive. 2 times 18 gives me 36. So I'm just talking through it. You can do it too. 8 times what gives me negative 40. So again, if you're not comfortable with division, use it as a multiplication sentence. A positive times a negative would give me a negative answer. 8 times 5 is 40. So that'd be a negative 5. Hopefully that's going okay for you. Remember to pause, go back whenever you need to. So now we're going to take all of these rules that we've learned from adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing to evaluate algebraic expressions. So let's try this. Be patient with yourself. Pause and come back if you'd like. So we have negative 2 negative 2 times a, which is negative 3, minus, notice it's a subtraction sign. We have to replace b with just b. So I like to do parentheses to make sure I know I included the sign. So now, PEMDAS, we go in order. So I'm going to go negative and a negative is a positive 6 minus this negative 5. And our rules of adding the opposite, so we're really doing 6 plus a positive 5, which equals 11. Next one, we're going to evaluate C when it's negative 6 plus 3 times A when that's negative 4. Notice how I use parentheses, so I didn't think I was subtracting 4. PEMDAS next. There's parentheses, but there's nothing in it, so that's really just my multiplication. Negative 6 plus, notice we have a positive and a negative, so that's a negative 12. Now we're adding two numbers with the same sign, so we keep the sign, so that's different, right? So adding is you keep the sign. So negative, I'm getting more negative, 6 plus 12 is 18. So some rules there. I know you can do it. Think back about what is the same or different about subtracting, adding, multiplying, dividing. Focus on what you do know, and you will do great. I believe in you. Do you?